Hey, Lamb back. Welcome, everybody. Welcome.
Land
Come
back,
in.
land back.
Lamb
What's
back.
good?
Good
What's
morning.
good?
Hey, how
Good
you
morning.
doing,
Good morning.
guys?
Land back, y'all. Come on in the room. Come on in the room. We got this Revolutionary
Maria?
book, brand new series. We're talking about the young lords going to Puerto Rico. Super
Yeah,
excited. I'm gonna show you
we're talking about Borinquen, which in the Taino language means land of the noble people. So we're about to talk about the noble people of this island and islands. We'll get into that too. Share when you come in. Hashtag share when you shared it. Share with the Boricuas that you know in Chicago. Share with the Boricuas, the New Yorkers in New York City. Share with the ones in Buffalo, Cleveland, even the Boricuas that live in Los Angeles. Yeah, we everywhere. Share it. For real, we're everywhere.
I'm gonna share it with all my colonized siblings, brethren, and sistren out here. We all need to learn this revolutionary history of our ancestors, connected. You know, I represent the Yoruba nation. We got our people up in here in this Puerto Rican history. So, you know, it's connected. It's for everybody, all colonized people.
Yeah, see you, Ali. Hey, went back, Cheif Ali.
Bam, bam. Chief Muhammadu up in here. Welcome, welcome. What's good, Andrea? Man, I see you. Welcome. Make sure we're sharing. Hashtag shared when you shared.
And sharing in groups. If you're in groups, share with your groups. Share with your mama. Share with your sister. I know I got people in my family watching, you know, because they're like, oh, like Cheif Oju, you're going to be doing what? I'm going to be talking about our family. I'm going to be talking about our history, our people. So they're into it. Coming into the room. So bring your family and friends into the room.
Land back. We're building and raising some money to take our land back. We got the Hammer City project. You know what it is. You know what it do. No cops, no rent, no Rona, no white people. All colonized people coming together to build this self-determination, overturn colonialism. You know what it do. Land back.
Yes. So
what are we reading on, Cheif Oju?
So this is our new book. You know it. You heard of it. Maybe you've heard of it. The Young Lords, a reader, which is a collection of writings from the organization, a collective of poetry, a collective of art, a collection of all these pieces of history that represent the Young Lords Party and Young Lords organization. Put together by this guy, Daryl Nguanza, who that doesn't sound like a very colonized name, but he actually is a colonized guy. Yeah, but it's interesting. His later books have a Spanish last name. That's an interesting point, right? Yeah, we're reading this collection, right? Because we want to learn about the Young Lords. We're going to talk about who these people were. Who were these noble people from the land of noble people trying to create self-determination for Boricuas, for Puerto Ricans on the island, all right? This book was also with a forward from two comrades who were in the Young Lords as well. So that's what we're reading right now. That's what we're going to be reading for these next few book traps. All right.
Yes, we is. And like I mentioned, every single book trap, we are raising money for our biggest project, Hammer City. We got getting up some land in Florida, building up a city for poor and working class colonized people to, again, build self-determination, to imagine, not just imagine, but to actually put into practice, our revolutionary imagination about what it looks like to live in a world free from oppression, to live in a world with our land back in our hands, with our labor back in our hands, with our resources back in our hands. So, you know, donate. Let's set a goal for book trap. Let's set a goal. Let's get, I want to get at least $100 up in here for this project. Let me see. Yes. Who's our first donator? Could we get one? I feel like we shouldn't start even without at least one donation. Come on.
Yeah, and while you are donating right now, we're on at least one donation. Just so you know, if you're watching, you've never seen us before. Black Hammer is an anti-colonial organization working to get lands, our lives, our labor, and our resources back in the hands of colonized people through the destruction of white power and colonialism, right? And so what we're doing is we're gathering our people that look like us, right? Into, Cheif land back. Hey, yo, our pledge. Love it. And we're getting people that look like us.
I'm gonna up our goal because we're already halfway there now. At least 150 up in here.
150 today? I think we can do it. I believe in my colonized people. I believe in our leadership. I believe we can do it. So if we can get $150, I know we can get free. I know that. All right. But yeah, that's who we are, Black Hammer. So while you're watching this, if you want to join, blackhammer.org/join. All right.
Join us.
Yeah. So let's get started. Yeah. So the Young Lords, right, is a group that we hear a lot about when we talk about the Black Panthers and a lot of the revolutionary movements of the 60s. But sometimes it's not really a well-known group, right? If there weren't Boricuas where you're living, you might not know about them. And so yeah, like we're really going to get into this and like who these people were, especially for people who just might not know about this side of anti-colonial struggle. Yeah. So just so y'all know who I am, I'm Cheif Oju. I represent the African and Boricua nation, right? The Borinquen nation. And so I have African blood. I have indigenous blood. Those are the movements that move within me. Those are the histories and the ancestries that power me today, right? Hey, Sia, sorry, I saw that $15. I gotta shout it out. Thank you. Yeah, those are the blood. That's the blood that runs through me, right? And that's what powers me today. Like, and I think it's like the best of both worlds. Like, for real, like I got like the struggles of people who are just trying to get their land back and their humanity back, all going through within me. That means I gotta like show up. I gotta show out. Like I gotta show out. It's all in me. It's so I gotta do it. And that's like the fervor. That's the excitement we should have, right? When we're thinking about our ancestry, right? It shouldn't be just like, oh, I come from, pan sobao and cafecito in the morning. Like, I'm not about pan sobao, cafecito. I'm about revolution, right? It's about that, right? So, yeah. So let's get into it.
Cool. Y'all basically know who I am. I be up in here on these book traps, but it's Chief Nas up in here. I represent African nation, specifically Yoruba. I represent the African nation in general, but I be Yoruba, Ijebu, Prince of Elisha Remo. What it is. It's a shame that I don't know enough about like the Puerto Rican history, the struggle of the Boricua, just because the Yoruba are so central to it. So I'm real excited to delve into that exploration of my own ancestors' history. So land back, y'all.
Yeah, awesome. All right, keep sharing while we're going at it, and try to get this as many groups and people's faces as possible. All right, so so let's start. I want to real quick just give you like a context of some Puerto Rican history before we get into the read that back, just so that nothing is just like what is this, right? So we know Puerto Rico was an island or a set of islands, right, colonized by Spain, right? You got Christopher Columbus coming over, taking over and killing hundreds and thousands of indigenous people, and basically submitting this island to the will of this European colonizer, Spain, right? And until about 1898, right, when the U.S. colonizer power said, hey, we want this land too, we could get some good access to like certain areas for war and whatnot. They said, Spain, we're going to do war. And in 1898, when Spain lost to the U.S. colonizer, the lands of Puerto Rico, the Philippines, Guam, Samoa, all went into the hands of the U.S. colonizer. And since 1898, Puerto Rico Borinquen has been under the will of the U.S. colonizer, right? And so we're about to hit like 122 years of this, right? This year, 122 years of Puerto Rico Borinquen being under the U.S. colonizer, right? So this is like U.S. colonialism in your face, right? Like this isn't like some like, oh, like does the U.S. colonize people? No, the U.S. colonizes people. Right? It's like happening today. That's me. That is people that right? That's all of us, right? And this is just.
I remember learning. The way I learned about colonialism in school was like this ancient thing. Like it's this thing of the past, this thing of the 1500s, the 1600s, and never something of the even like the 20th century. Like I really learned some bullshit. But anyway, yeah, this shit is present, a very present reality.
Yeah, exactly. It's nothing that we have to go back to learn about. It's very much in our own lives, right? Around the world, right? And right here in the United States. So yeah, let's get into our first read that back. So when we're reading, when you see a quote, you see something that like sticks out to you, we read that back, and we want to make sure that you're telling us what you want us to read back, right? So let's get into it. If y'all go to page 2 of the book, which I think is page like 19 of the PDF, because we provide that. If you need that, let us know.
Check out our virtual library.
Yeah. We hear about the origins of the Young Lords Party, right? Or the origins of the Young Lords, right? And as it starts, like this editor, this is like one of the few times we only hear his voice. Like other times, we kind of like are seeing the writings, right, of the actual Young Lords, but here we kind of get a summary a little bit. So he says, as months passed, different people entered and left the group, which became known as the Sociedad de Abuso Campos. In May 1969, the collective, partially organized by Miguel Mickey Melendez and including Juan Gonzalez, began to clarify its mission with the help of several key members. First, Pablo Yoruba Guzman, who would become a minister of information and one of the most visible and vocal members of the group, came to New York and joined the discussions. Next, David Perez, a political radical from Puerto Rico who came to New York via Chicago, met up with Guzman and SAC. On their first night spent talking together, they came to an agreement that SAC needed to stop meeting and start acting. 2 weeks later, on June 7th, 1969, they found their model for activism, the Young Lords Organization, a street gang turned political in Chicago. At this point, the members of the SAC developed coalitions with other progressive Latino groups, a group of street photographers, activists from El Barrio and from the Lower East Side, a group of former gang members and street activists who had taken the name Young Lords. And after a series of mergers, a unified group came, the New York Young Lords, and they received an official charter from the Chicago org in July 26, 1969. And this last sentence, I think, is really interesting. According to Guzman, we split from Chicago in April 1970 because we felt they haven't overcame being a gang. Right. So yeah, like the Young Lords organization like began in Chicago, right? It was Chicago Boricuas. That's me. That's my people, right? Chicago Boricuas, who were really just a gang. They were a turf gang. They just were like a turf gang living in Lincoln Park, which was a lakeside neighborhood here in Chicago on the north side, which was at that time in the 50s and 60s, really, really poor, working class, a lot of different people, white, there was colonizers and also a lot of colonized people in that neighborhood from a lot of different places, right? And like this neighborhood was in the first set of neighborhoods in Chicago being gentrified. This is like 1960s gentrification. They even weren't calling it that. They're calling it urban renewal, right? Mm-hmm. And you had the street gang who was like, okay, we just like are, doing our thing. We are like just organizing people because, we're in these schools where they put us in the closets because we don't speak English. That was happening to them. They put us in closets when we don't speak English in Chicago schools. Our parents aren't being beat up by the pigs all the time. So they're like, let's get together and protect ourselves just as a regular gang, right? And then they're seeing their neighborhood constantly being demolished. They're seeing Gail said, yeah, colonialism persists, right? They just call it different names now, exactly. And colonialism was existing in the 60s in the Lincoln Park neighborhood of Chicago. They were knocking down these buildings. They were trying to get rid of these slums, right? Where all these Puerto Ricans were living. And this Young Lord street gang, they're like, you know what? Like, this is our turf. This is our turf, right? This is where we live. This is what we protect. So they're like, wait, we got to protect this against something else now, right? Because lots of these gangs in Chicago were forming because they kept getting harassed by white people, right? Like getting harassed by Italians, by Irish kids. They're like, we got to get together because they keep harassing us. And so they're like, wait, now the state's harassing us? Now the city's harassing us? They're knocking down our buildings. They're pushing us out. What? We got to get together and organize against that. So then Jose Chacha Jimenez, he was the leader of the Young Lords gang in Chicago. He was like, you know what? We got to take a different approach to what we do, right? And what he did was we're going to still be the Young Lords. We ain't changing our name, but we're going to be working always for the people and not just for us. That was the change. That was the transition, right? And so you got like, it's interesting, like Chief Nas, because then you had this like street gang who was like in Chicago, like, hey, we're going to organize our people. And they were doing it. And then you got like this Sociedad de Abuso Campos in New York City. And they're named after Pedro Albizu Campos, who in Puerto Rican like anti-colonial history is one of the heroes. Pedro Albizu Campos, he was a African Puerto Rican, right? An Afro-Boricua, or African Puerto Rican, who basically was leading the anti-colonialism movement against the U.S. in Puerto Rico. And they named the society after him, you know, and the things that's interesting with these New York lords, they were activists already, right? They were like activists and students and like, you know, some people that they brought, you know, they had some of their regular people and gang members and, you know, stuff like that. They were all coming together, right? But they were really a lot of students and who were already calling themselves activists. And then they were looking for a model for activism. I think it's interesting that when they went, they were like, how do we talk to the people? And they went to the Chicago example, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's interesting how they went to Chicago, said, hey, like, can we get a charter from y'all so we can start our own Young Lords? But then split.
Eventually split.
Yeah, split like in 2 seconds, like in less than a year, because they were too much of a gang. They haven't overcome being a gang. I think that's interesting to me. That's one thing I never knew.
Right. It sounds like it starts off on a good foot of like understanding that it's the poor and working class colonized proletariat, right? That I think of our fourth point of unity. It is the poor and working class colonized proletariat that is the only class that, you know, must lead the overturning of white power, colonialism, capitalism, imperialism, and all its symptomatic offspring, right? That the poor and working class colonized proletariat, you know, those of us at the bottom of this system, you know, who feel the sharpest edges of colonialism, like you're talking about them, like peeping the, being not just like harassed by, you know, the white whipping class in Chicago, but also being, you know, harassed by the state and starting to understand that like contradiction, again, that grows out of that pain, and starting to organize out of that pain to defend themselves, right? What was him? Right, that the New York group would like see that and unite with them, but then kind of ditch them after basically, I don't know, like writing them off as like not disciplined enough, not politically educated enough. It's absolutely, like you said, it starts to foreshadow some of the class contradictions that we see.
For real. Like I was feeling salty. I didn't know this. Like I knew a lot about the Young Lords of Puerto Rico in Chicago. Like my family's gentrified out of multiple neighborhoods. I've been learning about this shit since I was in high school, just because it was what was happening to my people. I just wanted to know, like, why do we keep changing neighborhoods? And I thought I knew all this, but I didn't know the New York one split because of this, like class contradiction. I was like, that's bogus, y'all. Like, really, y'all gonna like cut yourselves out because there's too much of a gang going on in one? But and that threw me off. I think that like it really gets clear when you see like the three phases. So like you see the three phases of the Young Lords in this introduction that this editor guy talks about. First, it was the Young Lords organization when both New York and Chicago were together. Then they split, and then it was Young Lords organization in Chicago, Young Lords party in New York City, right? And some of it was like legit. One reason that was legit why they wanted to split was like, you know, they wanted a really like revolutionary trajectory, right? Of like liberation, of a collective liberation. Hey, that's legit. You know what I mean? That's important, right? But I wish they struggled more to get the Chicago group on that page rather than just cutting out and saying bye and like peace, dude, right? So you have, go ahead.
Like stuck kind of petty bourgeois student like type of vibe of writing them off like that. It's very
that's what it makes me feel like. And I'm not saying that's how they all were, but like that contradiction was there, right? Like that contradiction is looking like it was there for real. And then it really gets clear with that third phase, right? Which I didn't even know about this phase. Like this, if you all look on the introduction, page 5, it's the Puerto Rican Revolutionary Workers Organization. I didn't even know the party became something called this. So at one point, they weren't even the Young Lords anymore. They were this Puerto Rican Revolutionary Workers Organization. And they were like thinking people were like snitching. They were like putting people on their own house arrest within the organization. Like they were essentially to the point of beating up and torturing each other. For what? Like when the state's already doing that? Like what is going on? And I think it's because a little contradiction around class grew and became this thing where all of a sudden they got so far away from the people because in that third phase, they said, oh, they stopped talking about Malcolm X and Pedro Albizu Campos. They started about Marx and Engels and all these like white communists, this Ku Klux communists that we all keep hearing about that we think we're supposed to talk about, right? But yeah, exactly. You know, the Chicago Young Lords were on that revolution trajectory. because they were talking about their people. All they want to do was solve their own lack of power. Yeah. Is that crazy?
You say what?
Isn't that crazy? I don't know. That was crazy to me.
No, it is crazy, and like the way that they like see themselves as becoming more and more like militant and revolutionary, yet they're completely, separating themselves from the immediate like community, and seeking to like, make it into this worker struggle, away from like the contradictions of colonialism that are, directly facing the community. It speaks to what I was thinking of on, if you could show page 4, I'll read that back that I got. It says, right. While many of the programs and offensives of the YLO, and this is like the OG, I'm pretty sure the YLO was like when there was both of them, the Chicago and New York together. While many of the programs and offensives of the YLO implemented were successful in the conventional sense of meeting their stated practical goals, the success of the YLO should not be measured by such instrumentalist standard. Such analysis overlooks the constitutive effects of the YLO's activism, namely that the YLO constituted and cultivated a fundamentally political consciousness in El Barrio that offered residents a social imaginary through which an active political life could be led. In part through such transformations in the people's consciousness, the YLO thrived in their communities and garnered the active support of both a broad membership numbering in the thousands and a loyal non-member community base, right? This is where it's at, like, engaging in, revolutionary programs in the community to really give our people, the masses who are the makers of history, that development of like political consciousness outside of the bounds of, colonial white power capitalism that tries to, completely obscure the problem and make like actually addressing all of the problems that our people face, like we talk about in our third point of unity, coming from colonialism, coming from the submissive neo-colonialists. Like what's powerful about the work that they did, right? It's not even just the, or I think about us as an organization, it's not even just the numbers of PPE that we get out. It's not even just the food drives and the coat drives, but it's about giving our people, giving our people a like expanding again the horizons of like our political imagination about what is possible, about who we are and what we can truly make, and what we can truly destroy. As we the hammers, right? We build and we destroy. And so the fact that the young lords like eventually, I would say, deteriorated that relationship with the community and like focused so hard on this like worker struggle and on unionization and in the workplace. It's a shame. It shows it seems to me to be contentious with our fourth point of unity about the fact that it is the poor working class colonized proletariat that is the only true makers of history, the only true class that will overturn all of this, and they just kind of turned a blind eye to that, unfortunately.
Yeah, for real. And like what Lay says here, like what the masses love, the masses protect, right? So like when you're getting further and further away from the people, like that last phase of the party did, like that means that they feel like they only have to protect themselves from each other, and they aid at each other and put each other in house arrest. That is crazy. I never heard of an organization putting each other in house arrest. Like when y'all were later in the, that's just crazy. And that's what happens because they didn't have any people to really protect the organization from any of the contradictions that might occur, right? All they did was like rely on each other and aid at each other because they only had each other. They didn't have the masses, right? And so so the young lords like really did at first get with the people, right? They fed the people, clothed the people, but they expanded their consciousness around what is possible, like how we can have our land back, how we can stop the violence of the U.S. colonizer and any colonizer who might come to these islands. And I say islands because Puerto Rico is actually not just one island. It's four. It's Puerto Rico, Culebra, Mona, and Vieques. So like, let's expand. They have to let's expand our mind to even thinking that like island nations are just one island with a border. Like our indigenous peoples crossed from place to place. Like the Taino of the island of Borinquen were like meeting the Taino of the people on the coast of Venezuela. We're meeting the Lucayans in the Bahamas. We're meeting the Seminoles in Florida. Like these were whole indigenous nations that were constantly moving and seeing each other, protecting each other, and working with each other. And like the young lords are expanding our mind around that. Oh
Right.
yes, and like, that's and we have to expand our like colonized family. Our colonized family is so huge, right?
Yes.
And Boricuas, no, our family is huge. You know, there's more Boricuas in the mainland than there are on the island. There's like millions more here in the United States than there are in the actual Borinquen. Like the family's huge, and then also the whole colonized family is huge. So let's build for our colonized family. So let's get those donations going. You know, we're building Hammer City, right?
Yeah.
Hammer City is going to be the solution to us getting our land back, right? And so I want to see. Let's try to get Cheif Oju's 5 donations. Good. Let's see.
Bring them in. Bring them in.
And yeah, and imaginations are powerful and necessary, right? But also, it's not just the ideas; it's the material reality we have to create for ourselves, right? So the young lords are expanding the imaginations, but they're also trying to gain the material reality for their people, right? The material reality of having our own land back in our own hands, right? So
a central part of that, right, is that, like you said, really moving beyond these like colonial borders, moving beyond the imagination that imposes on us about our separation, about our disunity, and really understanding the unity of all colonized people. You know, and that's why we're building this Hammer City out here, putting it under the stewardship of the indigenous peoples, whether you come from Peru or you come from, you know, the Inuit people of so-called Canada. You know, all of this land, your ancestors, you know, indigenous ancestors was going all up and down, you know, like beyond these white power colonial borders. And so, you know, we're taking all of that back, the imagining just a new world, a completely new world, which is
we got 20. Thank you, Tina. Salute to you. Kush King got $5. Yeah, do we got like 3 more people who can like donate to Hammer City? It's Cash App, Build Hammer City, Cash App, Build Hammer City. Wait, go ahead, not Chief Nas.
I just said it's for your liberation, you know.
It's for your liberation, right? It's for our collective liberation. Chief Taliba here got read that back for us. Mass people organizations which involve the Puerto Rican people wherever they were at any level of struggle. Woo! I was gonna talk about that. Ooh, you on the same page. I was gonna talk about that. Like while people are donating to Hammer City at Cash App, Build Hammer City. Oh, and thank you for that pledge. And also GoFundMe.com/BuildHammerCity. So yeah, this is what I thought was so interesting about this class in contradiction between New York and Chicago. So in their platform, which we'll talk about in the next read that back too. Hey, Chief, we got 10. Yes, we're almost there. We got 4. One more donation. One more donation for Hammer City, and we'll keep at it. But yeah, like I think that's so interesting, Chief, too, with that read that back, because like you have this New York and Chicago who had like this kind of class contradiction thing going on, right? And one of the platform points was like what Chief Taliba put in the read that back, like you're supposed to work with the people at any level of struggle. So I think it's interesting how that was one of their platform points, but then they kind of gave up real quick with their own comrades around that very point and said like, bye. So I think that's interesting, but that's the important, right? That they at least first realize that we have to work with people at any level of struggle. Like, I don't care if you are like you are trying to figure out how to read a book because you are struggling with like actually reading a full sentence. I'm a teacher. I encounter that all the time. I don't care if that's your situation. I don't care if you know how to read like quantum physics. You know, my grandma had a saying like, man, it's in Spanish too. I want to try to get it right. Sabes todo con un libro, pero no sabes nada. Like, you know everything about a book, but you don't know nothing. Right? Like it's people can be all book smart and like, hey, I've been to school, but those people, those aren't the revolutionaries. I'm like, hey, Neela, $5.
Neela.
Yes, Conrad, thank you, salute. You like all the people who know a bunch of stuff, like those aren't always the people I want working with me. You know what I mean? The people who think they know too much tend to be the ones that I'm like, they take the longest to understand what's going on, right? It's because of this class contradiction. Right? Oh, thank you for my lower hand tap.
I was keeping that too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I want the people who understand most their situation, and the people who understand most their situation are the people who've been through the most. They're at the bottom of the society that has put them there. Like they put them there, and you're not gonna ask the slave owner what it's like to be a slave. You're gonna ask the slave what it's like to be a slave, right? And I don't need someone who thinks they know by reading all these books and thinks they know what it's like to explain to me. I want the person who goes through it to explain it to me, right? And that's the true revolutionary trajectory that we have to have. Those are the people that we recruit and bring into our organization, right? That's the people that we need, because those are the people who know most what it means to be defeated and beat down, right? Because the most beat down want to get back up and beat their ass up when they get up, right?
And the most interested in it, like just on a concrete, objective, material basis, it's those at the bottom who have the most interest in actually overturning the whole thing, not just, shifting and transforming it into new, complex, reformed, neo-colonial like modes of the same shit, colonialism. Like, it's the people at the bottom who are really out here interested in overturning this entire, system, which is why we as a Black Hammer organization are a mass organization, or an organization that you will see us every single weekend all across the United States. We got chapters in Nigeria, got chapters in Brazil. We meet the people, in the streets. We're talking about Hammer City. We're talking about colonialism. We're, passing out PPE, trying to provide, material advancement for our peoples, and really understanding that it is the poor and working class, colonized proletariat, like I keep saying, is the, only true class really willing to overturn all of this. Hey, let's get him, Michael.
Hey, Michael. Thanks for the time on it. Yes.
Yes, that's my Puerto Rican homie out here.
Hey, I love it. Yeah, I know. Like, hey, Boricos, like if you're watching this, like help build our revolution, help build your revolution, help build our collective freedom. Join Black Hammer, blackhammer.org/join, and donate to Hammer City, right? Yeah, I know. Like, yeah, Mohammed, most educated people think they can build a revolution by writing essays, right? That's why, like, students, like, hey, I'm a teacher. Hey, I like my students, but the ones who like be really trying to be a student, I'm like, oh, God, I get tired of them real quick. Hey, I'm like, God, like, why do you care so much about like school? Like, just like get over it and like let's get through it and build our liberation. I be talking about that, and those are like teens, like I'll be like that. But I want to talk real quick too about I mentioned my grandma. I want to talk about like why this is also important to me and important to all of us to really build for like the people who are on the bottom, right? So my Puerto Rican family is from Guayama, which is in the southeast of Puerto Rico. It's on the Caribbean seaside. It was one of the top 3 slave ports for enslaved Africans on the island, right? And so there's a lot of African Boricuas there. And my grandma, who was born in the 40s, like she was not that old. This is like, she left school at 3rd grade because she had to work on the sugar plantations, because there were still sugar plantations by the time she was 8 in 1950 in Puerto Rico. Wow. And so she was helping her family cut sugar. And what's nuts, I found this out way later in my life. Her last name was Pica, is the same name of the plantation that started right there in Guayama, Puerto Rico in the late 1700s, early 1800s by Spanish colonizers. A name that carried to my generation. Like, it's like I have access to that name because it was my grandma. It's the same name as those slave owners. Like, this history is not history. This is our present. She had to cut sugarcane for that family, even though that family was not there anymore. It wasn't the Pica family in charge, but she was still cutting sugar for them. So today we are still cutting sugar for them. Today we are still at their coal plants. There's coal plants all throughout Guayama. The cancer rates in Guayama, Puerto Rico are so high because of this ash coal that they keep doing. There's so much industry from U.S. colonizers on the island. That's the way they have done it. Like sugar a little bit, but they put all these factories and pharmaceutical companies on this island. There's a huge medical problem in Puerto Rico because of this. And like, my grandma's no longer with us. She left us at 58 years old because of this, right? Right? Because colonialism did this to us. Colonialism is killing us, right? And that's why I do this. This is why I build. This is why you should build. Because these people who have worked not just because they're trying to work for the colonizer, who work to survive despite the colonizer, want her to keep fighting. If there's anything I'm going to do for her is to keep fighting. I'm not going to give up. Why would I give up? Even if I can't do it the way I can, why would I give up? Never give up on this.
Right. And white power, this whole white power system, if I can interject real quick, like has the audacity to try to, brainwash us into this shit of like, I mean, you see it all the time, get over it. Slavery was back then. What is it? We live in a social justice, civil society now. And it's like just the power of like that white power colonial system, especially in these schools, and the way that it like teaches or rather misteaches or miseducates us about our history in order yet where we're continuing to see obviously the jagged edges of colonialism, impaling our communities today, yet being informed, officially in these schools about this thing being a past issue, and just how insidious that is, how disorienting that is, and then just how important that clearly lays out to us the importance of studying our history, of understanding, and like it says even in the book, like a scientific study of our history, understanding the national liberation struggles, understanding the constant transformations and reforms into neo-colonial bullshit. But yeah, just the importance of studying our history, like because they try to take that away from us, because our history and our knowledge of our ancestors, our knowledge of the tactics, the strategies, the spirit, the will, it's gruesome and it's ugly and it's present, right? But it's also extremely inspiring. It's extremely inspiring to see how our ancestors have struggled and continue, not just our ancestors, but our brothers and sisters, our siblings, across the colonized world, continue to struggle for liberation, continue to attack colonialism at its core.
For real. It's because it's a constant struggle is what we're always taught, right? Like, hey, we struggle. We're on the struggle bus. We're always struggling. So we always know it's with us, but it's always been with us. The struggle has always been happening. And studying our history helps us know that it's always been happening, right? We're not aware that it's always been happening until someone says, hey, someone did that before. You can do it too, right? And so let's go to our next read that back, because it actually goes with that exactly. So in this part that we read, we learned about the platform of the Young Lords Party and the organization. We also get their 29 rules of discipline, right? And I kind of like their rules of discipline too, because they lay out exactly what the comrades should be doing all the time, right? I like number 13, where no member may speak about another member unless he or she is present. I mean, we practice that, right? Like we practice making sure that we give criticisms to the comrades directly, right? We don't gossip. We're not like, oh my God, did you see what they did yesterday? Like, that was whack. No, we don't do that, right? We say, hey, you did this. This was good. This was whack. This is why, right? We talk to our comrades directly, right? You probably might be up in organizations where like, oh God, there's so much gossip. We don't do that here at Black Hammer, right? Yeah, exactly. Wait, go ahead, Chief Nas. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, that was it. I was just saying, join Black Hammer. We have a culture of practicing criticism and self-criticism on a principled basis. It's about understanding the contradictions that we all have. We're all colonized. We all have contradictions. We all make mistakes. But we don't judge our comrades based on the contradictions they make. We judge our comrades on the basis they overturn it. And just that practice of criticism and self-criticism is so important. It's cool to look back at these historical organizations and see how committed they were to those same practices.
Exactly, right? So 15 and 16 both get to that, right? Like when there's a contradiction, it has to be solved, right? And number 16, how do we solve it? The Young Lord said, once a week, all chapters and branches will conduct a criticism and self-criticism session, right? So if you're in Black Hammer now, you're like, oh man, we talk about criticism and self-criticism so much. Yeah, because our revolutionary ancestors and brothers and sisters and comrades have been talking about this forever too, right? This is everywhere, right? Because that's a process and tool we can use to defeat the colonizer within us, to defeat the contradiction within us, so we can move on and do the work that we need to do. And then number 29, I like a lot too. I wanted to read that back. It says, at all times, we keep, I'll wait for it to fill up. At all times, we keep a united front before all forms of demand. This is true, not only among lords, but all revolutionary compañeros, right? Ooh, unity is important, right? Like talk about when they started off as a street gang, right? If someone was mouthing off and like doing something they weren't supposed to do that worked against the gang, what happens to that comrade, right? Like, like stuff that ain't that good, right? you have to have unity. You have to have unity with your comrades. And this, again, it's not just within the organization, but with other poor working class colonized people who are also doing revolutionary work with us, right? That unity is what keeps us together. White power be organized. White power is it's united.
It does the same shit that it's always done, divide and conquer, and make us think that these divisions like come before our unity, rather than recognizing that we are fundamentally united as colonized people, and that white power is the one that has created all of these different divisions, etc. I think about our point of unity number 2, right? That all colonized proletarian are equal, no matter age, sexuality, gender, bi, multiracial identity, mental and physical differences. We see that reflected in the Young Lords in the way that they combated machismo and they combated heterosexism, and they, addressed those different symptoms of colonialism to build a united front is powerful.
Exactly. They were at first. It's interesting. The platform that they show us the original one and the new one. First, they said have revolutionary machismo, and then they revised it saying down with machismo. Right? I think they're like, hold on, let's rework this a little bit. I mean, hey, like if I got like a brother who's like, I like punching things, I'm like, sure, cool, punch. Let's just punch white power. Exactly. So like make make machismo a little revolutionary, but also down with it, right? Because the colonizers taught us to always use that against our own, especially against our own women. Yes, we're a continuation of this fight and struggle. Yes, just to reiterate it. Thank you for reiterating that. So like that machismo, use that if you're gonna have it for a revolution, but like let's try to just say have a revolutionary mindset all the time instead, right?
I forget who said it or where the conversation was had. It was about the way that, we see all these divisions within our communities, and we like are literally like in terms of machismo and like, violence against women, like we see we're swinging. Our people are clearly swinging at something. Like there's a clear like, anger and pain that's being addressed, and we just gotta really unite around swinging at white power collectively, and not at ourselves.
No, exactly. And like again, and this is what gets me upset about hearing about this split between New York and Chicago. They seem to understand all of their all of their platforms and the rules of discipline that unity was important, that colonialism divides us, but they started with that initial division and like not trying to work to overcome that struggle of division there between the Chicago street gang and like the New York students. Like it just blew up, and then it made the party disappear. It made the organization disappear. And it's just so important that when you see a contradiction in your work, when you see like a comrade not doing what they're supposed to be doing, when it goes against our 4 principles, let them know, criticize them, right? We have to be unafraid of doing that. That's something that we have to really be doing so we can avoid having little things become big things, right? That's our thing, right? They always become big things when we ignore them. We know that, right? You start sweeping all this dust and dirt under the rug, and then all of a sudden the pile's so big you can't even put the table on it, and you try to sit there having dinner like shit is normal, and then you falling over in your chair and your food's falling. That's a bad metaphor, but you know what I mean. I think
that class contradiction is just like the importance of these like petty boo students committing class suicide and like actually uniting with the poor and working class colonized proletariat is like, the key to success. And that's what they skirted. And it's like when you get into this idea that you are, as the petty boo student who's, done your readings and this and that, like it's not the case for you to be the leader of the revolution. Like your work is valuable in as much as you are actively committing that class suicide, actively building organization that is for and of the poor and working class colonized masses, which is why I really appreciate an organization like Black Hammer. Like there are plenty of people, myself included, who are petty boo like students and stuff. But our work is in the streets. Our work is bringing this organization to our poor working class colonized brothers and sisters out there, that like this is yours to be a leader in this this revolution, is yours to lead this. Your people are yours to lead. To lead.
Yeah, no, and that's why join blackhammer.org/join, and really make sure that you're uniting with your colonized working class brothers and sisters, right? And your poor brothers and sisters, like they in your family, so don't act like they ain't your family. Talk to them and unite them to this, and unite yourself to them, right? Not just because you're trying to do something for them you're not helping them. You're not no missionary, right? You're a revolutionary, right? So you're getting them on your side because they're going to help protect you as you help try to protect others, right? Because they understand the actual colonial contradiction, right? They're the true working class, proletariat, colonized leaders. They are the true leaders. Yeah. I'm back. So let's go to the last read that back, because I think that's going to help us also get a little bit more context about some Puerto Rican revolutionary movements, because I want to make sure that we also kind of get understanding of like a context of the history of Puerto Rican revolutionary movements, right? So this is more about the beginning. This is more about the beginning of the Young Lords, but I'll give you all some context. So out of these rebellions developed the Young Lords organization in Chicago in 1969. I'm going to stop there real quick so I can just give you all that context. So I'm going to work backwards in time. So when they say out of these rebellions, they're talking about right above, like it says, in 1965, we rebelled together with Black people in Chicago, New York, Philadelphia. And they're trying to like just kind of make it together. But the first, again, this is why Chicago the best, be the best. In 1966, the first Puerto Rican rebellion in the city, right, on the mainland that wasn't in Puerto Rico, happened in Chicago. It was called they called it Division Street Riots, Division Street Rebellion, right? And this was when the pigs shot a young Boricua man, about 19, in an alley in the neighborhood Wicker Park, which is the neighborhood after they were pushed out of Lincoln Park through urban renewal gentrification. They moved to Wicker Park, and guess what? That neighborhood gentrified today too. So in this neighborhood that's now has coffee shops, colonizers walking and not giving a crap about whatever's happened on that actual land. There was a young Puerto Rican man that was shot by the pigs. Word got out. People went out on the street, and then a dog of a pig, because pigs can own dogs. Crazy world we live in. Bit a pregnant woman, and then that's when shit blew off. And for 3 days there was like fires, rebelling. People were rebelling in the streets. Puerto Ricans for the first time on the mainland here saying no, right? And the origins of that was the Young Lords Street Gang, and then there was the origins of the Young Lords organization, right? And then so we go one step back to the island where a lot of these people are immigrating from, right? And on the island was Pedro Albizu Campos and his revolutionary organizations worked to get the island independent of the U.S. colonizing. And in their fight, they had experienced the Ponce Massacre, where dozens of people were killed by the Puerto Rican neo-colonial forces, right? Puerto Ricans shooting Puerto Ricans because they had a U.S. colonizer had them working for them, right? And they did a lot, like those revolutionaries like Lolita Lebron, they walked up in 1952, they walked up in Congress. Lolita Lebron said, "Hey, Congress, I'm up in the balcony. I'm just watching today's session." She pulled out a gun and tried to kill Harry S. Truman, I believe. It didn't work. They got arrested. But, it would change. But isn't that crazy that they did that? Crazy. Seeing like Puerto Ricans trying to come up with something to do, and it's like, wow, and those are like that revolutionary group did a lot. And so there was a lot of suppression during that time. In the 40s, the U.S. had a gag law. You couldn't, so this is when my grandma was a child in Puerto Rico. She, nor her family, nor anyone could talk about Puerto Rican independence, fly a Puerto Rican flag, or talk about anything that had to do with Puerto Rico not being part of the U.S. with the threat of jail time. The U.S. had a law like that on the island from until the early 50s, right?
Sounds like white power.
Yeah, sounds like white power. White power, the U.S. snake, the 9 snakes in the 50s. And then the origins of that movement, going back, were the struggles of Puerto Ricans against Spain, right? And so in 1868, we had the Grito de Lares, which is in Lares, Puerto Rico, a town in the mountains, because a lot of indigenous people, when they were trying to flee the Spanish colonists coming, ran to the mountains in the central part of the island, right? They that's where a lot of indigenous people were, and Africans also fled there in maroon communities to avoid enslavement. And Lares was the beginning of this revolutionary movement to get Spain off the island. And they call it El Grito de Lares, the yell. Like El Grito is a scream, to gritar is scream, yell. So it's El Grito de Lares. And that's where they created the flag of Lares, which is like a star with like a white cross and has like a light blue and red, right? And that was supposed to be the flag of Puerto Rico, right? It was a failed rebellion. It was a failed rebellion, meaning that they didn't get Spain off the island then, right? But that origins flag, that was the flag that was supposed to be the flag of Puerto Rico, right? So when Puerto Rico changed hands in 1898 under U.S. colonialism, they actually took the flag of Cuba, because Cuba had a successful independence and anti-colonial movement. They said, hey, we're going to use the Cuban flag as our base. And what they did was they used the blue from the Lares, El Grito de Lares flag for the triangle, right? Because we all see the Puerto Rican flag. Hey, you see a Puerto Rican parade in New York, Chicago. If you're from New York, it's a lot. And so, but then when the U.S. said, no, what, we can't do this gag law anymore, they're fighting back too much. They said, okay, we can find a Puerto Rican flag now, but the blue has to be different. So if you look at the Puerto Rican flag today, it's a dark blue, like the U.S. flag blue. And so you see the Puerto Rican flag, know that it's not supposed to look like that. Know that like really revolutionary movements have tried to create an independent a symbol of independence for the island, but even colonizers can take control of that. Shows how important and powerful propaganda is, right?
Period. You get the words right out of my mouth. Exactly. I got nothing more to say. The power of propaganda. It would be that the greatest, most evil, greatest is in like most, greatest evil of like empires on the face of the planet would be so meticulous as to like literally, try to regulate the color of the flag because of what that meant to the people and what that brought into the consciousness of the people. Like, yeah, it really drives home the importance of propaganda.
Right? Just to make them convinced like you are connected to the U.S. You'll be ever connected to the United States, right? Visually, by just looking at the flag. Every time you look at the symbol of pride for you, you're gonna think of the United States. That's messed up.
And that's, I didn't even understand understand that direct connection with the Cuban, flag and its history and revolutionary, connection there. That's such a sinister flip, like, and so subtle too. It's literally just from a different shade of blue. That's wild.
Yeah. Pedro Albizu Campos, just so we know, just because I'm not sure if the book's going to keep talking about him, because we're really going to be focusing on the young lords. But Pedro Albizu Campos, he was eventually captured in the mid-'60s by the U.S. And this is one reason. This is one thing that radicalized me when I learned about this. So the CIA captured Pedro Albizu Campos, and in 1965, they murdered him in this is the United States, in one of the most gruesome ways. They did radiation experiments on him, and they even took photos. They kept him in a room and continuously did radiation and just putting it on his skin, and and that's how they killed him. That's how they wanted to silence Puerto Rican anti-colonial movement.
They will literally do there's no conscience. There's no consciousness there like this. But just like we say, by any means necessary will we get free. By any means necessary will they, commit gruesome atrocities to keep us down, without a blink of an eye.
I know, and that's why he'll always be one of my heroes. He said, he's a quote, "Cuando la tiranía es ley, la revolución es orden." When tyranny is law, revolution is order. So you have all these people talk about law and order, how to keep our, you have Trump talking about law and order, all these people saying law and order. Well, Pedro Albizu Campos, he said tyranny, when tyranny is law, revolution is order. All right? Cuando la tiranía es ley, la revolución es orden. Recuérdate de esto. Okay. Let me go. So sorry. Let me go to that, read that back. And I just want to, just integrate that, re-emphasize. Sorry, I'm thinking about him. All right, the Young Lords of Chicago. It says they united with the Society of Albizu Campos to create the national organization, With a 13-point program, the organization began to serve and protect the people with free breakfast programs, free health and clothing programs, and with the taking of the People's Church, where the organization was recognized as a group with support from the community. All right, and and that just brings us back to Chief Nas's Read That Back. Right, it's about the support of the community.
Period.
The people have to know about the organization. The people have to know. So right now, if you're watching, share again. I don't care if you share it one more time. Share it again. The people have to know. The people have to know about not just our history, but about revolutionary groups carrying on this legacy today, right? So share again. Hashtag share. You share it to another group. Share it to your friends. Share it in a private message. I be private message sharing this all the time. Share it. Share it now. Yes, when tyranny is law, revolution is order. Cuando la tiranía es ley, revolución es orden. Share that quote. Share that quote too. Share anything that you learned today. If there was a Read That Back, if there was a something that we mentioned today, mention that to someone. Like, hey, did you know the Puerto Rican flag is supposed to look like the Cuban flag? I saw Indu said like, oh, they didn't know the difference, right? Like, have that, right? And yes, Nicole, yes, like banning religions and like taking these symbols, right? Is like a thing that happens across indigenous societies, right? And indigenous nations all over Turtle Island, right?
All over the world.
Around the world. Yeah, this is happens to colonize people around the world.
And just watching those, I mean, it's so important. Again, like what we're saying, share this political education. If you unite with the need for the unity of all colonized people to unite with anti-colonial revolution to really attack this beast. Because when we study these histories, and we go to Puerto Rico, we go to Korea, we go to Nicaragua, we go to Haiti, and we see the same exact. I mean, we have these really unique histories of struggle and of resistance and struggle. But we see the same exact pattern, of colonization coming in. National liberation movements rising up, the suppression of those movements violently, the implanting of puppet governments and neo-colonial sellouts, right? And just like the constant divide and conquer, again, like it's, people coming to the United States and the disconnection of them from their history. Like it's this constant ongoing onslaught against our people. And when we study these different histories, we understand the different tactics that white power uses, and we understand the different tactics that our people have used to resist it, and just like match up those patterns to understand it holistically, so that we can understand, again, the power of what it means for us to unite as colonized, poor and working class people to, attack colonialism at its root, attack our problems that we face. We face all sorts of problems as colonized people, and the root of it is colonialism. The root of it is those neo-colonial sellouts. And so, studying this shit is mad important.
Yeah, political education is so important for our community. And the Young Lords Party was, they internalized that already because they were students, right? But they have to remember that political education is also making sure that you're winning yourself to an understanding, right? Like you're not just a teacher; you're teaching a student all the time, right? You're both learning and sharing knowledge. Right?
On that point, if I can interrupt real quick, right? It's this is one of the political educations we were just reading last week from Lake Dwan about like you can only truly educate yourself like when you are actually waging ideological struggle with the masses, right? Like when you're actually not just here to read, and we're not just reading history and theory to know our history and theory and to like somehow raise our like consciousness. It's not being raised unless you are really engaging in that education, how to put it, like engaging in communication with our people, with the masses, literally out in the streets, to really have a pulse on where our people are at. It's that process of like understanding where our people are at, and engaging in that struggle and consciousness raising that is, again, consciousness raising for all of us. Otherwise, like detached from that, you're not doing anything that's materially significant. You're not doing anything that's actually going to unite the force that will overturn colonialism. So, you got to join an organization like Black Hammer, Black.org/join,
Yes. And remember that, like the comment earlier said, it was talking about imagination. And yes, like ideas are important, but exactly. Oh, Muhammad, think the same thing. It's also about dialectical materialism. It's about the material as well. That's exactly what I was going to talk about, right? What we're studying. It's that we're marrying things, right? Like we're looking back at our history to see what people had and why, or what people didn't have and why, and how we can learn from that to get the things that we need later, right? So if we see these patterns keep happening, we're jumping, like Cheif Oju was saying, we're jumping to all these different colonized nations, right? And we're like, hey, people saw that they had stuff taken away from them. They saw that they were being killed. So what they did was fight back against the thing that was taking things away from them and killing them, right? They didn't need Marx, they didn't need Engels, they didn't need all those things to realize that the problem was that they were being killed and stuff was being taken away from them. It's so clear. I don't know why people keep saying they need Marx and all those people when in Haiti, before Marx was even born, they're like, I am being killed and kidnapped and things are being taken away from me, like my land. I want to say no. You don't need no book to say no to that. You don't need books to say no. How many of us have said no before we knew anything that we knew about any of this? You can say no before this. That's what it's about. That's where it comes from. It has to come from that. It can't come from reading Marx. It can't come from any of those things. It has to come from you wanting to say no. Everyone who's a Black Hammer, everyone who's joining the revolution right now is someone who said no to their exploitation, has said no to theft, has said no to murder, right? So if you're saying no right now, if you're watching this and you're like, no, no to that, then you are capable of being a revolutionary. You are capable of joining us. You are capable of doing this work. If you're colonized and are saying no, you can join us. If you are a colonizer, if you are white and are saying no, pay reparations. Give the resources back. You're saying, no, that should have been stolen. You're right. It shouldn't have been stolen. But give those resources back. Pay reparations. Go ahead.
And our colonizer class, we got a brand new class for colonizers. We will teach you how to be on the right side of history, to rejoin humanity and submit under the leadership of poor working class colonized people to build a world where nobody lives at the expense of another. We got an option for you. Pay reparations and come get politically educated, on this anti-colonial revolution. That's a Facebook event, so you can go search that up. Colonizer class.
Yes, there's colonizer class on our Black Hammer page. Join it. Rejoin humanity. Rejoin the thing that has been taken away from you because they made you some weird puppet of like white power, and like while you are trying to come and hurt us, I ain't gonna let that happen. None of us are gonna let that happen. So take the class, pay reparations, rejoin humanity, and colonize people. If you have said no, exactly. Every revolution started from masses saying no. If you're saying no, don't just go out and say no on the street. It's nice to yell no. It's nice to let people you want to say no. Protest, say no, but no, you also have to organize. Say an organized no. Let's have an organized no, where we can say no and then do the things to get our material back, to get our land back, to get what we're having stolen from us back. Yes, and so right now, before we close it, we'll close in a few, but we want to again reiterate, we're building Hammer City. Hammer City, as we said, is a solution to this. We want a Hammer City. We want a Hammer City in Bodycam. We want a Hammer City in, so we want a Hammer City everywhere, right? Yeah. Everywhere that's been colonized, we want a place where colonized people can go to survive, be supported, and build for the revolution so that other Hammer Cities can be built, right? This isn't like a one-time deal. You don't come to Hammer City and be like, we good. No, we're trying to free all colonized people, which was a platform point of the Young Lords, by the way. They said we have to commit to liberating all third world peoples. They did make a mistake, and I forgot to mention this. They did talk about colonizers in their platform. They said poor whites are also organizing, and we have to support them. Black Hammer, we don't believe that, right? Poor whites, the white working class. There is no white working class. It's the white whipping class. They are the white people who haven't done the game right, and essentially are the people who help reinforce and continue colonialism, right? Without the elites having to get their hands hurt.
Foot soldiers of white power, period. Foot soldiers of white power, right? It's gotta, if you want to be on the right side of history as a white whipping class person, you have got to commit that national suicide, like we said, and unite under the leadership of poor and working class colonized people, understanding that it is the most oppressed, the colonized proletariat that is the leadership of revolution. Y'all are not the leadership of revolution. And once that, is united on, and once we are united with as that leadership, that's an option. It's an option.
Yes, exactly. Unite under our leadership. And like respect that we say no, respect that Pedro Albizu Campos said no, right? Like respect that history and come under our leadership, right? You always want to talk about respecting us and like whatever. No, it has to be under the true leadership, right? in the platform, the Young Lords even said that we are the true leadership. They say it too. This isn't new. We always know we're the true leadership because we're the ones who know what it means to be colonized, right? And so since we know, just like I said, you wouldn't ask the slave owner what's like to be the slave. You wouldn't ask a colonizer what it's like to be colonized, right? So the colonized are the leadership. So whether you are if you're colonized, donate to BuildHammerCity, CashApp, Venmo, GoFundMe.com/BuildHammerCity. If you are a colonizer, if you're white, pay reparations to CashApp, BuildHammerCity, GoFundMe.com/BuildHammerCity. And at Hammer City, there'll be no Rona, no cops, no rent. We know in this time, there's mass evictions, mass unemployment.
Our people are deeper every single day.
Yeah, our people go out on the street during winter. Like winter is upon us, y'all. It's gonna get cold, especially up here where the Chicago Boricuas are at, right? It's gonna get cold, and our people need an option. So we have to share with our comrades, who are our revolutionary, working class, poor brothers and sisters out there in our communities, that we have an option for them to be safe. Right. So, yeah. Any other read that backs from our commenters or people watching? Share anything you have to say. We'll be reading the next few chapters for our next book trap.
Yeah, I think the next book trap. We'll just read chapters 3. It's just chapter 3 because it's mad long, so we want to give a good. There you go. Not to give us like 150 pages to read type of thing. So yeah, join us for chapter 3. I believe it is called.
It's the origins of the Young Lords organization.
Yeah, so, you can find a copy of this at the blackhammer.org. Click on that education tab. Check out our virtual library, and it's in the Revolutionary section, so you can get that free PDF right there. Join us next week. Grab a quote that really stuck out to you or that you have a question about, whatever it is, and submit it for a read that back. We'll break it down. I won't be here next week, unfortunately. I learned so much. Thank you. Salute to you, Cheif Oju. Just like Chief Ina and so many other people in the comments were saying, like, wow, I learned so much history, and really appreciate your passion too as a, Boricua from Chicago. Like, obviously, passionate about your people's history and struggle. Like I said, it's cool for me as a Yoruba person to understand and really dig into the history of, the diaspora, and how it's just the revolutionary roots all over the place. Yeah. It's inspiring.
I'm excited to keep learning more about the Young Lords. I'm learning still. Like I said, we're teachers and students at the same time. I'm learning still from this book. I'm going to be learning from my people when I go talk to my people out in my community today as well. I do outreach for my community. So I'm going to be still learning today too. So we're all learning, and I hope we keep on realizing that we have to learn not just from kill trees, that Columbia keeps killing, but also from our people out there on the street as well.
Yes. Black Hammer, and understand, again, we do this political education. It's not just our reading theory and history. We understand that we can only truly teach ourselves if we are students of the people. And, that's what we do here at Black Hammer. We're students of the people. We, hit the streets, hashtag hammers in your hood. Find us all over the place, passing out PPE, talking about this Hammer City, really trying to expand the political imagination of our peoples to what is possible, to understand who we are, what our destiny is, really, what our material objective destiny is, which is to overturn colonialism, to take our land back, to take our labor, our resources, our lives in total under our dictatorship, so that we can actually heal this world, build a world where nobody has to live at the expense of another. So if you're about all of that, unite with our 4 principles. Come and join Black Hammer organization, and we'll get you, up and organized, up and balancing these colonial contradictions. We all got plantation to be going to. We get part of our mission statement is about the fact that we understand that our labor is constantly being coerced to build for this white power colonial capitalist state. But we can be redirected to a noble cause, which is serving our people, and that's what we do at Black Hammer. So come on in and join us. Join the Political Education and Culture Command. It's your boy, Chief Nas. We be doing all sorts of cool projects and political educations and cultural creations.
Yeah, for real. Join us for next week, and we'll get going. Keep learning about the Young Lords. All right.
Yes, we will.
Salute y'all.